Peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? Here we go, returning to the book of Acts. We left off last time in chapter 6, or we finished chapter 6. So I'll be picking back up in chapter 7. And I spent a little bit of time on chapter 7, especially the first two verses, because it almost appeared as though there was a discrepancy between what is said in the book of Acts, chapter 7, and what happens in the book of Genesis, the end of chapter 11, when it goes over Abraham leaving his homeland. But when you actually carefully look at the verses and look at what's said, you get a better sense of what's going on. The Bible is a complete book. So when you look at these different books, you really do have to take into consideration everything that's said across both books, so you can get an accurate depiction of what's going on. So we're going to be picking back up in the book of Acts, chapter 7, verse 1. Let's get into this. So Stephen, if you don't remember, is brought before the council, before the high priest. They got some false witnesses to testify against him. As a matter of fact, I'll go back just so we can be up to speed. Let's see. Verse 10 of chapter 6 says, "And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spake," talking about Stephen. Then they suborned men, which said, "We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moses and against God." And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes, and came upon him and caught him and brought him to the council and set up false witnesses, which said, "This man ceaseth not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law. For we have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth shall destroy this place and shall change the customs which Moses delivered us." And all that sat in the council looked steadfastly on him, saw his face as it had been the face of an angel. So we went over that. I just wanted to get back up to speed so we know what happened. Why are they so adamant about persecuting Stephen? What is it? Well, they couldn't argue with him. He was bringing up points and pointing out things biblically they couldn't argue with. And this goes to another point that happens at the end of this interaction with Stephen. He is stoned to death, and Paul is consenting to his death. Now, looking at the attitude of the scribes and the high priests and all of these leaders, you kind of get the idea, like, this is what was going through the mind of Paul. Like, they could not dispute his wisdom, and it drove them crazy. By their standards, this dude is a layman, but this layman has come along and pretty much has unseated them. They don't know how to deal with this. They don't know how to deal with a dude that's seemingly coming out of nowhere and breaking them down with stuff that they never heard. Anyway, so then said the high priest, "Are these things so?" So now they've lobbed false accusations at Stephen, and now they're asking him, "Yo, are these things true?" Now, Stephen didn't disregard what they said, but it almost seems like he disregarded their whole analysis of what he was saying. and just straight got to the truth. This is what he started out. He started out with this. And he said, men, brethren, and fathers, hearken. What that word means, listen. So he's like, all right, I want you to listen to what I'm saying. And they had to listen very carefully because Stephen is about to give a master class in Bible history and how this Bible history applies moving forward. Something that apparently none of these dudes really had a good command on. Okay, so he said, the God of glory appeared unto our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he dwelt in Charan. Now, I looked up this place. If you go back, which we're gonna go back to that Old Testament verse, but this is a border town that's right on the border of Turkey and Syria on the Turkey side. So the southern part of Turkey, right on the border with Syria, is where this town is, and in the Old Testament, it's called Haran. So the problem I had initially is if you read, if you read the Genesis account, this is going to get a little slightly tricky, so just bear with me. It gives you the impression that Abraham went to Haran, and it was in Haran where God told him, okay, you're going to have to get up. I'm going to send you to this other place. But I was able to reconcile what the book of Genesis says and what's said here. And I'll show you what happened when I read those verses. So we're going to go to the book of Genesis, chapter 11 and verse, let's see, I think I'm going to start at verse 30. So, well, actually, I'll start before then. So this is where you get into the lineage of Abraham and his family. And I'll start at verse 26. And Terah lived 70 years and begot Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. So those are the three he begot, Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begot Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begot Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. And this Ur of the Chaldees is like right around, I think it was closer to Babylon, like that Iraq region. Just north of Babylon, which I think is south of Baghdad. It's kind of weird, but you can look at one of the old maps and kind of see where all this was. And I think Ur was pretty much a good portion of that land. So pretty much Iraq. If you ever talk to a person and they say they're Chaldean, they're from Iraq. First time I heard somebody say that, I was like, wait, you're what? What does that mean? I didn't know what was going on. Okay, so this is where they are. Haran dies. So now Lot is pretty much an orphan, doesn't have his father, but Abraham takes Lot in. Okay, so we're on verse 28. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abraham and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren and she had no child. Verse 31, and Terah took Abraham his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abraham's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran and dwelt there. Now, this is what I didn't piece together, right? Because it doesn't say anything about God speaking to Abraham yet at this point, but you see where they have left Ur and have gone into the land of Canaan. So now you have to ask yourself, okay, what made Terah leave his homeland and just randomly go off into the land of Canaan? This was not something that just happened during this time. People weren't just upping and leaving the land of their nativity and going somewhere else. And I'm going to show you what I believe biblically actually happened. And it's funny, like I said, you read things and kind of don't really pay attention to what you're reading, and you read things sometimes into what you're reading. Okay, it says, and the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died. So now Terah died in Haran. So now it's Abraham. I was Abraham, Nahor, Lot, and all of their families. And the Bible says, now the Lord had said unto Abraham. Now you realize how that's worded, and this is where I did not even pay attention to this. It didn't say God said this to Abraham at this point in Haran. It said, now the Lord had said unto Abraham, like past tense, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto the land that I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abraham was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And so when reading that, my assumption was that God said this to Abraham when he was in Haran. But if you actually pay attention, both to what's said here and to what Stephen said, God actually told this to Abraham before they got to Haran. They got to Haran, they stayed there, his father died, and then he was like, okay, it's time for me to move on into this place that the Lord had told me to go. And verse 5, it says, and Abraham took Sarai his wife, or Abram. He wasn't Abraham at this point. I keep saying Abraham. Abram took Sarah his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. Now, how do I reconcile, and outside of what I've already said, how do I come to the conclusion that this is something that God said to Abraham before they got to Haran? Well, again, paying attention, which I did not do initially, right? So in verse 31 of chapter 11, it says, and Terah took Abraham, or Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. They were going into the land of Canaan. Why were they going there? Well, what I believe happened is God told Abram, this is what I want you to do. So Abram let his family know, okay, look, this is what I'm getting ready to do. I got the word from the Lord. And Terah was like, all right, let's gather up everybody. We're going. And for whatever reason, they didn't continue on. They stopped in Haran. And then that's where you pick up in chapter 12, where it tells you what God said to Abram. Go into this land that I'm going to show you. They stopped in Haran. His father-in-law died, and then he moved on into what God had told him to do. So that was a lot of going back and forth. I looked up a bunch of things, tried to look into some commentary, some things that people have said about these verses, and honestly, some of the stuff I found just personally, it did not suffice. I don't feel like a lot of the things I read was really uh, uh, accurately and adequately explaining how to reconcile those verses. So hopefully I made sense. I know I was kind of jumping all over the place, but Stephen is really he Stephen went back to like the very beginning of all of this. The beginning, not necessarily all the way back to Genesis, but he went back to the beginning, the origins of the Hebrew people. So he's going to slow walk them from all the way from here to Christ. And you will begin to see and understand exactly how they could not refute what he was saying. They had no rebuttal. They had no comeback. There's nothing they could say. So I'm going to read on because the further verses are actually going to, again, kind of show what I was talking about with, Haran and when God spoke to Abraham and all that. So, and Mesopotamia, in case you didn't know, is that I think it's the entire region of, because I was looking at a map, I couldn't remember the entire region of Iraq, Syria, and part of Turkey during that time. I think that whole thing was Mesopotamia. Okay, verse 3, and said unto him, so this is what God said unto him, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, and come into the land which I shall show thee. And verse 4, then came he out of the land of the Chaldees and dwelt in Charan. And from thence, when his father was dead, he removed him in this land wherein he removed him into this land wherein ye now dwell. So you see, God told him to go to this land. They went to Charan, stopped there. His father died, and then they moved on. So again, I was looking at these verses back and forth, trying to reconcile, like, man, what the heck is going on? Anyway, he's going back all the way back to the beginning. And here's something to note, because you remember, they're talking to him about blaspheming the law of Moses. Now remember, they call Abraham their father. What is Stephen doing? What Stephen is doing right here is he's showing them, Abraham was serving and talking to God before there was any law, and you call him your father. I'm pretty sure this is what he's pointing out to them, which is the reason why he went all the way back. He slow walked them all the way back to the beginning of their people. Man, how can they argue this? Because if they're arguing that the law is what justifies and all of these things are the requirement, then he's just showing them, but wait a minute. Is Abraham not our father according to the flesh? Like, did we not spring from Abraham who served God? And he had no law. He did not have the law of Moses, and he served God. How could that be? If the law was the letter requirement that they're making it, I think this is what he's pointing out, and you begin to see the sheer wisdom that Stephen has. It was a wisdom that they were not prepared for. They were wholly unprepared for, and I think it was a wisdom that Paul wasn't prepared for. As much as he studied, as much as he knew the Old Testament, I think when Stephen started breaking this stuff down, they were like in their minds having a short circuit. Like, wait a minute, how did we not see this? Things like that still happen even to this day. Anyway, y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.